Ryan,
Good morning.
good morning. Thank you for being here.
Indeed. How are you?
I'm good. I was just talking to my coworker about all the fires. We are, we've got some fires over here. I'm in Great Junction, so got some serious stuff going out there right now. It's
I
not affecting
I
us, but
know
just,
my sunsets have been beautiful over here on Denver.
all right, let me make you a presenter and then we
Okay.
could do a quick check. I sent out reminders this morning to everybody, so let's see. I don't use this app as much. I have to remember. That's it. That's what it is. That's what it is. I'm remembering. Make co-host. Yes. Okay. Go ahead and share your screen.
Me a while to remember how to do that too.
I know we use Teams a lot for the State Forest Service, so I have to remind myself for Zoom. Hey, Anthony.
You see that okay?
Yes. Perfect.
Excellent.
And
I
I can hear
was
you great, so we should be good.
light behind me is not too much.
No, not at all.
Okay. You want me to stop sharing
Yeah,
or
the way I do the introductions is I call people out and then let the person who's going next so they can unmute to help move things along. So we'll do an introduction of all the people and then you'll get to see where or hear where people are from.
okay.
And I have your
Test
bio that
is
you sent me, so thank you for that. How's it going, Anthony?
Oh,
There
not
it
too
is.
bad. How are you doing?
Good. Is this your first official first CEUs after your new shiny certified arborist?
Second,
Second.
uh,
Okay. We'll take that.
last the last Zoom meeting was my first.
Oh, okay. That's right. That's right. That would make sense. So are you working for anyone right now?
No, just kind of doing my own thing.
Oh, no. We
Yep.
need good arborists in town, so that's good. Did my little reminder this morning with the Zoom link help?
Yes.
I was like, I can send it out real easy, and then people don't have to dig through their emails to try to find the link.
Yep, that was quite handy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just have to remember to do it in time to make it useful before people panic.
Yeah.
Hi, Susan. Hey, Jim, in your intro, do you want to say something about Tony to the group?
Oh, you want me to?
Yeah, would you mind just to let the group know in your intro?
Oh, yeah, I'm Jim Klett from the
No, not yet, but
Oh.
during your intro, would you just let the group know about
Sure, yes,
Dr. Koski?
yeah.
That's a great holding photo you got there, Molly.
Molly, have these fires messed up your classes?
I hope not. I'm heading up there after this, so see what's happening. Construction of the warming hut has affected it a little bit.
Oh, okay, up on the Grand Mesa. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, people are still trickling in. Dr. Stewart is making her Zoom registration now. All right, let's just get her started. Thank you to those. I think we'll have people filtering in. It's kind of been a crazy week for folks, so hopefully we get some more people trickling in. So good morning, I'm Cammie with the State Forest Service. What we'll do is our normal introductions of, I'll call on the person who's introducing and then the person who's next, so you know when to unmute yourself. And then we'll start with our first presenter, Ryan Bartlett, and then our second presenter is Dr. Jane Stewart. And then we'll do our round robin. We will get the 2 CEUs for attendees. If you registered with your certified arborist number, then I have that. Brian, I know that you have some extra people with you, so just send those to me in the chat of anyone else who's, if you have multiple people sitting at the computer. So we'll start with Anthony starting and then Rob next for intro. So if you would just, let's make it a little more interesting this year or this time, let's say in your name, if you're with anyone, right? If you're affiliated with any organization and your favorite tree. Come on, Anthony, you got to know that.
Oh man, that's all right. My name is Anthony DiCamello. I am not currently affiliated with anyone, and my favorite tree is probably the quaking aspen.
Oh, that is a good one. I'll say mine is the bur oak since I didn't include that in mine. It is my personal email address is bur oak, so I'm all in. So Rob's next, and then Dr. Klett.
Good morning, Rob Davis. I'm the city forester for the city of Grand Junction. My favorite tree, just to say something kind of to bother people, is going to be with the heat and needing shade in places where trees shouldn't be. I'm going to say Siberian elm is my favorite tree today.
There you go. Dr. Klett and then Susan.
Sure. I'm Jim Klett from the Professor Emeritus at CSU Department of Horticulture. My favorite tree, there's many of them, but I think Kentucky coffee tree.
That is good.
I have some kind of bad news to report from the department. We lost a beloved friend and colleague on Saturday. Dr. Tony Koski passed away from his battle with pancreatic cancer. He had that for the basically last year and so forth. But Tony, even in his final days, recorded an article about turf and drought stress on KUNC and presented a webinar also. So we lost a colleague and a true friend here, and his memorial service is going to be Friday here in Fort Collins. So I thought the group ought to know that we lost a colleague and a true friend.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you
Mhm.
sharing that. I wanted the group to know, and I'll share with the group the link to, or if somebody has it quick, we can, or if you can put it in the chat, the link to his late, you said it was the radio station, right? That he did a interview with?
Yeah, KUNC.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right, KUNC. I think it was in one of the emails that I got that we can put in the chat so people can access it. So thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Susan and then Molly.
Oh, that's hard to follow. You know,
I
I've
know,
known
sorry.
Tony since 2014. So, yeah, Susan Carter, City of Grand Junction, water conservation. I guess my favorite tree today, because there's so many, I would say sensation box elder. It's giving me lots of shade in my backyard right now. So
Nice. Molly and then Marilyn Moore.
Molly Freilisher with CSU Extension Tri-River Area, residential horticulture and natural resources. I do the Master Gardener program. So many favorite trees, but I was just on the East Coast, and I'll have to go with sugar maple. Tried to get my fill there. Not a favorite tree here, but
Good
there.
distinction. All right, Marilyn and then Mark Lovell.
Marilyn Moore, Salida Tree Board. Whoops, I'm not got up.
No, you look good.
Yeah. Okay, so I was concerned I was muted. So Marilyn Moore, Salida Tree Board. I'll say my favorite tree is the ginkgo.
That is a good one. All right, Mark and then Aaron with super trees.
Lovell, Colorado State Forest Service program specialist. And my favorite tree is the Western Larch.
Oh, nice. Aaron and then Beth.
I'm Aaron. I'm with Super Trees. And my favorite tree right now, I've been digging the tricolor beech. I've seen a couple of those around and haven't had much experience with it, but that's a cool tree.
I love how people keep saying right now, just in this
It's always
moment.
changing. There's,
Could change in 5
every
minutes.
week it's a different tree for sure.
All right, Beth, and then we'll let Ryan do his introduction. So Brian, I know you got a crew of people there. Are you going to be able to have everyone introduce themselves after Beth goes? Shouldn't have asked a question. Just go ahead. No, Brian says no, thanks. Okay. All right, Beth and then Maddie.
Hi, I'm Beth Corrigan with Planet Geo. I live down in the Front Range, and my favorite tree is from back in Illinois, a tulip poplar.
Oh, I like those. All right, Maddie and then Ryan.
I'm Maddie Hill from City of Steamboat Springs, the arborist. And I'd say my favorite tree is less exciting than everyone, but I like it, is the Douglas fir.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And then, so Ryan and then Josh.
Very good. Good morning, everybody. Ryan Bartlett in Denver, Sanctuary Tree. My favorite tree for the morning is actually coffee. Thank you. And that does change through the day as well. So depends if I'm outside.
That's a good one. All right, Josh and then Ryan Cox.
Howdy, folks. Josh Embry, ERBM Recreation and Park District here in Meeker. And my favorite tree, this is a tough one, but probably just the white oak.
Can't go wrong with an oak. Ryan Cox and then Adam Moore.
Morning, Ryan Cox, Forester with the State Forest Service in Durango. My favorite tree always and forever is a bristlecone pine.
Nice. All right, Adam and then Carl.
Morning, Adam Moore, Supervisory Forester in the Alamosa Field Office of Colorado State Forest Service. I was going to say sugar maple, but Molly said it because I was back in Vermont visiting, but I drove back here, and I tell you what, Vermont, Toronto, Wisconsin, Minnesota, everybody had their fringe trees blooming, and they looked really nice. So I'm going to go with fringe tree.
All right, nice.
Very good.
I'm not very familiar with those. I'll have to look it up to remind myself. Carl, and then Jane, if you'd like to do your introduction real quick and say what your favorite tree is after Carl goes.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Carl from the town of Carbondale. I would say one of my favorite trees is probably the ivory silk Japanese lilac, just because I was driving by some small trees and that's a fun one.
It is a good one. Thank you. And go ahead, Dr. Stewart.
So I'm Jane Stewart. I'm a plant pathologist, tree health specialist at CSU. My favorite tree is an Arizona walnut. So Whitney Cranshaw gave me an Arizona walnut, which should be more resistant to thousand cankers. And so I have it planted in my yard and it's doing awesome. And I don't see any beetles yet. So
nice. That's a good one.
Today, that's my favorite tree.
For the moment. And then Brian Rich is with the city of Grand Junction, and him and a group of, I think, 5 others are also listening. And if you register, since you all registered with your ISA number, you don't need to send it to me separate, just they were, because there's more than one at that computer. So I got you with your registration. All right, so we're pretty close to being on time. We're going to hop right into Ryan Bartlett's presentation. And so Ryan, I have a bio. This is new. I was prepared this time. Ryan Bartlett began his career in the green industry in the late 1990s. He specializes in pests and diseases of trees and native pollinators of the Rocky Mountain region. Ryan pairs his knowledge of pollinators and pesticides to educate commercial pesticide applicators in environmentally safe approaches to pest management through the use of disease forecast methods and integrated pest management theory. Ryan authored his first insect-related book in 2003, A Field Guide to Native Bees of the Western United States. Ryan lectures at industry-related conferences and teaches biology and plant health care at the Arborist Apprenticeship Program at the Front Range Community College. That's a lot of work, but when he's not doing that, he's looking at bugs, fungi, birds, and trees, and he spends time with his wife and 2 daughters hiking in nature or learning something new. And I really appreciate Ryan stepping up and presenting today. I was trying to go on vacation and finding presenters for this, and he said yes right away, as did Dr. Stewart. So both a huge thank you for stepping up. I know July is really busy for everybody, so thank you both for presenting. So take it away, Ryan.
Very good. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. Give me a second to share my screen. All right, did that come through?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so phenology. Phenology is one of my favorite topics, and how it can help us to time how we approach our tree care practices. So first of all, I'm having an unresponsive computer. Give me a second. And we're stuck on page 1. Ooh.
We didn't test that part out.
No, we did not. Let's try that again. Take 2, right?
Yes. Well, it just gave me time to get the KUNC link
good.
put in the
Okay.
chat. So
Excellent. All right. So what is phenology? Well, in a word, it's basically the timing of how animals and plants do their events throughout the season. So in a word, it's pretty much, like bloom time with plants and when they're setting fruit and when they're setting seed. Same thing with animals when they are maybe having egg hatch or adult emergence, that type of stuff. So it's not necessarily with weather, but with animals and how those cycles play out throughout the year. So the biggest question is today is how do we know when it's spring? Well, a lot of times people do use things like the equinox and the solstices. So those people are like, oh, it's the equinox, spring's here. For me, I'm a big flower person. So I'm always looking for those early blooming plants like grape hyacinth. Grape hyacinth is one of the first ones that we see here in Denver, anyways. Those spring ephemerals that are popping up, and it's like, oh, spring's finally here. Winter's over. So I'm also a big birder, so you can look at migration of birds, mating calls. One of my big tells that it's spring is when I start hearing the chickadees calling out, the male chickadees calling out, hey, sweetie, or nest building. So the other one that I look at is the ospreys. There's a mating pair over by Sloan's Lake that starts to nest right um, right near my house, and they usually start building that right around tax time. Tax time is also another good way to indicate that it's spring, but thankfully we don't have to guess on when our taxes are due, and that doesn't change year to year. So thankfully that one's set. But uh, another one that is a big cue is my wife always says, "Oh, it's summer because I hear the hummingbirds. Hummingbirds have returned." So those types of cues help you tie into when certain events are happening in nature. One of our natives, serviceberry. Serviceberry was used by both indigenous folks and colonists back like in New York. They used to call it serviceberry. Serviceberry was called such because it meant that the ground was thawing. It bloomed right when the ground was soft enough to start digging graves, and you could have services for the folks that passed away over the winter seasons. And it was also known as shadbush because it's timed with the migration of the American shad. So when that was blooming, you knew that the migration was a great time to go out and get some fish because you knew they were coming. So those types of things, and a lot of our plants and animals have correlated names because of that. When you go back, I'd love to do a little research on that someday. So I keep a journal. This is actually a journal entry from one of my, just lost my screen. I'm sorry. Do you guys still see my screen?
Yes, we see the
Okay,
red
great.
maple in the journal.
Very good. So this is actually a journal entry that I keep. I keep a journal of when I saw certain plants blooming, maybe certain insects that I saw, and I keep it on my phone so it doesn't look anything like this. But keeping journals allows me to keep track of what happens when. I'm sorry, Cami, my screen is locked.
Do you want to unshare and share again, or?
Yep.
We see the red maple again.
Very good. And I cannot get past my page. I'm sorry.
If you want, you could email me your presentation and then you could keep talking while it comes to me. See if that works.
Let's try this one more time.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so red maple, I saw blooms as early as March 13th this year. Siberian elm, just a couple weeks later, March 30th. Horse chestnut, one of my other favorite trees, May 6th. and then black locust around May 30th. So when you start keeping dates and tracking stuff, you can compare that to data sets that have been collected over the years. And over those years, we see that on average, we're having a 15, 20-day earlier bloom time than we were 130 years ago. So from 1920 to 2020, those are about 15 days earlier bloom time. So trending earlier times every year with everything that's coming up. Over the course of time, I've been taking photos of plants as they emerge, and you can see here that tulips, April 29th, 2017, we definitely got a snow just as those tulips were up. But I took a picture of my first tulip that I saw March 30th this year down here in Denver. It's a whole month early. Same thing with daffodils. So daffodils I've been tracking for a couple of years, and a significant change in their bloom time. Silver maple and red maple, we don't typically see as big of a change with them. Both of them are super early bloomers, but typically both of them are about a 5 to 10 day average, changing over a decade, as you can see. So redbud, again, not quite a month earlier this year, and it was definitely an early spring here in Denver. I'm sure it was in Grand Junction, but definitely trending towards those earlier times. And just to prove that I'm not making this up, this is from my Google Photos with a May 5th date stamp on it for that photo. Here's Catalpa, about a 5-day difference over five years. I haven't been tracking Catalpa as long as I'd like to have. So how does that affect what we're doing? Well, for a start, you can tell folks when they're sneezing and stuff, when things are blooming. So our wind-pollinated trees particularly, so oak, ash, elm, all those early deciduous trees that are blooming and releasing that pollen, you can track that through these observations. And so to understand more, we need to really kind of look at our traditional calendar-based forecasting calendars. So like this one, the CSU fact sheets, I love the CSU fact sheets, but when you look at honey locust borer and bronze birch borer, June through July, that's 60 days of time. So when is it? Is it coming out June 1st or is it coming out July 28th? So that's a long time. And emerald ash borer, late May to early August, that's a pretty broad time frame. So pine sawyers, May through October, you might as well just say the entire season kind of thing. So lilac ash borer, April through June. So if you're trying to time your treatments, what is it? Is it April or is it June? So again, how do we time those better? Well, first we need to kind of understand how temperature affects the growth rate of both insects and plants. And by doing that, we kind of understand their life cycles. So if you take a look at fruit fly, for example, fruit flies are used a lot of times in studies because they're pretty predictable. So 25 degrees Celsius actually translates to about 70, it's either 77 or 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So at that set temperature from egg to adult, you can say that it completes that life cycle in 20 days. If you were to lower the temperature, you're going to extend it to say 30 days or somewhere in between. If you're going to heat it up a little bit, they're going to start to mature a lot faster. So plants are the same way. If you give them a little bit more heat, they're going to mature a little bit faster. And so these are based off of what we call accumulated heat units. So again, warmer temperatures, they mature faster. Colder temperatures, they're going to accumulate much slower. So those accumulated heat units can be assigned to certain stages of each insect or plant. And through that, we can help to identify when we need to start scouting for disease or insects, and when to treat at certain stages. So say like European elm scale, we treat at the crawler stage. So you need to know that. You need to know that you're not treating at the adult stage that emerges out here. You need to do that at a certain stage, and that's assigned a number, a mathematical number. And we'll talk about how to come up with those numbers in a little bit. So I'm going to be using Japanese beetle because it's pretty well known as sort of an example throughout the rest of this. So the adults emerge at 1,000 growing degree days. On average, they can emerge a little bit earlier. And again, each day since January 1st accumulates a number. And so you keep adding those up, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. But if we take a look at last year, 2024, so on the 1st and the 2nd, we hit in Denver, we hit Wheat Ridge actually, we hit about 1,000 growing degree day units. So you should start looking for Japanese beetle emerging right about that time. I usually tell people in Denver, Japanese beetle starts to emerge right around 4th of July. That's when they've usually hit about 1,000 growing degree days out here in Denver. So this is a website for Greencast online. It's just an easy app, phone-friendly app for coming up with quick growing degree day units. Just a good resource. There's a couple other resources that I'm going to have for coming up with growing degree days, but a good one to use, especially if you're out in the field. All right, so growing degree days. Let's take a look at that math here. So it's pretty easy actually. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the high temperatures and the low temperatures, and we're going to just take an average of that, and then we're going to subtract just what's called a base number. So that base number here is 50. That's 50 degrees. That's typically when most insects start to really kind of get active and maybe begin their growth cycles and either sort of start molting or hatching from eggs, that type of stuff. So if you look at April 25th, 2024, we had a nice warm day of 73 degrees and a low of 44 that night. So we're going to add those up, and that'll come up with 117. And so you divide that by 2. So you're taking the average of the 2, and then you're subtracting that base number, that 50, to come up with the daily growing degree day. So that day, on April 25th, we accumulated 8.5 units of heat that day. So the day after was obviously a little bit colder. We only accumulated 4.5, and then obviously it looks like a storm came through. And on April 27th, it was just too cold to accumulate any growing degree days, so units of heat. So nothing's kind of maturing during those time periods. So how you get the year total is you just take that 8.5 and you add it onto the previous day's total for the entire year, 75.5, to come up with 84. So you just keep doing that day by day to come up with the totals. Now, I've shown you how to do the math. You don't actually have to do the math because there's lots of websites like the Greencast and then CSU's. We're going to look at CSU's forecast. So you just look up those dates and it'll give you the total for the year for your location. So just knowing how to do the math gives you a little idea of what that means. Now, the 50 that we talked about, that can change. Sometimes you'll see that it says that the base number was 32 degrees. Well, if you're living in Alaska and most of your plants are hardy plants that grow when it's 22 degrees out, yeah, you would want to use a base 32 because you're never going to accumulate units of heat when you're using higher temperatures for your base number. So, and then 54 is sometimes used as well. We'll see that in a little bit. So you got to look at your base number to understand if you're using the same numbers as somebody else. So important stuff. All right, so when we look at that, we can assign numbers to certain insects. So elm leaf beetle starts to emerge, that first generation, right around 400 degrees. Those are the adults that have overwintered, and they're there to start laying eggs. So each one, you can have a specific phenological event signed with that insect or plant, and then give it a date. So Japanese beetle, again, usually emerges about 1,000 growing degree days. So let's go to CSU's website. This is a great website, so easy to use. You just come up with your location. So I've selected Denver Stapleton, and it gives me a chart, a great little handy chart for the time I've selected. I can choose a really narrow timeline, or I can do the whole year. And you can see on May 20th, we accumulated, this is for 2024, we accumulated 217 units over that season, over that growing season. So it looks like it was actually a pretty warm day that day. 14-degree day units is fairly a lot of units for one particular day. So when we compare that against 2025, we actually can see that there's a bit of a difference. So of course, the first number, that's that daily unit. So it was much warmer in 2024 on May 20th than it was in 2025, accumulating only 6 units of heat. But overall, we're already at 300 growing degree days, and I can tell you a lot has happened since then. Lots of different flowers have already finished their cycle. You've got certain insects that are starting to emerge. And so using growing degree days can help you track and plan for what's coming next. All right, so here's an entire look at the entire year for Denver 2024. And I've chosen June 29th on this chart. We see that we're right at 993 growing degree days. What did I say shows up at about 1,000 degree units? That would be Japanese beetle. So Japanese beetle, we should start looking for Japanese beetle when you're looking at numbers like that. So keep an eye out for it. Over the long term, we can pull up great data. It's actually kind of a fun site to pull up data. I've just chosen 6 different dates for 1960, 1980, 1990, 2000, and 2010, and 2020. And you can see there's quite a discrepancy. We've got in 2020, it was obviously a much warmer year that year, over 1,000 units. So Japanese beetle had already started to come out and destroy people's roses about a week ago, versus 2010, where it was a much cooler year. And if you're trying to time certain treatments, you still have weeks to go. So are you setting out traps too early? Are you doing treatments too early? So those are good cues for looking at different things. Location as well. I know Cammie's in Grand Junction, probably along with a lot of you. It is way hot over there. I'm actually really glad I'm living in Denver looking at this chart. So 31 growing degree days on June 29th this last year. I am sorry, that sounds like it was a pretty brutal day there. And so Japanese beetle had emerged weeks ago. So if you're waiting for June 29th, or whenever that chart said, June through August, you're a little too late. And then Denver, we're just starting to see it. So we were pretty close to seeing Japanese beetle right on that day. And actually, one of my first observations, I think, was like 2 days later. Here's Boulder, a little bit cooler. So they're still a couple weeks or days behind us in Denver. And then if you looked at places like Telluride or or other higher mountain places. I don't know if they have Japanese beetle problems over there, but you know, they're in the 200s, so they haven't even really kind of gotten to certain stages in the growing season. And so back to the warmer temperatures and cooler temperatures affect growth. Well, that applies to plants, like we had said. And so when you pair those up, you compare what is blooming during certain emergence of certain pests. So for example, like I had said, Japanese beetle emerges right during linden, one of my other favorite trees, and kind of during rose time. Actually, roses bloomed a bit earlier this year, and so right at the end, they're mostly finishing out, and not as prolific around here. So definitely a bit earlier. But you can definitely use that as sort of a cue instead of going, oh my gosh, I haven't gotten on my computer to see where we're at for growing degree days. Just utilizing what's around you in nature helps you to come up with what you need to do. So if we take a look at this list, so this is a list of growing degree days for both plants and animals, showing those coinciding events. And lilac is a great example because everybody seems to have lilacs. So when you see those first lilac blooms, you should be looking at elm leaf miner, already those adults coming out, and they're going to start laying eggs, on those leaves, right around lilac bloom. And honey locust plant bug was pretty bad here in Denver and places. And so I used that as a, yep, okay, honey locust plant bugs starting to become active, and time to take a look at what we need to do. So last year we hit about, those lilacs were blooming right around the end of May, which actually was the beginning of May this year. So you need to be able to adjust your treatments accordingly, knowing how things are blooming or emerging. Pine needle scale, right when the Ohio Buckeyes are just starting to put on their very first blooms. You can see that we've got different types of events. So first bloom versus full bloom on certain things. And then of course, we see that emerald ash borer also typically emerges right when black locust is in bloom. So another good tree to utilize for those types of things. So this is data from Daniel Herms, who I believe works for Davey Tree, but he wrote this when he was with Ohio State University, and it's much more in depth than this. I just pulled some of his data off of it. So it's a good resource to use for some of those insects. Now, we don't actually have we don't have a full list of growing degree days for both plants and insects in Colorado. I'm working on it. I'm trying to publish one hopefully this winter, if not definitely by 2027, but I should have it for the most part this winter. What I've been seeing along with other data that I can pull from other folks, and I'll have that published hopefully in 6 months or so. Now, going back to my photos, my pictures, again, I've got my dates and I can assign those. So I've looked up the growing degree days that we accumulated this year and put for my location where I found those flowers, which were all in my neighborhood. So I put a growing degree days on there, and I can assign or look up the growing degree days for those insects. And you can see, of course, right when that horse chestnut is starting to bloom, I know I should be looking for elm leaf miner, codling moth as well. So that first generation that's going to be affecting those apple trees, those apples. And if you're a grower growing apples, you know that you need to be looking for codling moth during a certain time. So again, black locust, that I said, emerald ash borer emerges right when black locust. Well, so does elm leaf beetle, which I don't know about you all in Grand Junction, but we have a problem with them here in Denver. I'm sure they're the same problem in Grand Junction and other places. And so utilizing those trees to say, ah, yes, I need to start contacting so-and-so about treating their tree. Again, back to calendar base, looking at Japanese beetle, you've got those larvae that are feeding on that sod in early seasons, coming up closer to the grass and then emerging in June, July. Again, when do you time your treatments? Well, again, 1,000 growing degree days for the most part. And I utilize the golden rain tree, again, another one of my favorite trees, to say, yes, I should be looking for Japanese beetle. I'm sure Japanese beetle is not far along. So, and we have so many of these golden rain trees that you just kind of look around and you're like, oh, I should start paying attention. So emerald ash borer typically emerges around 450 growing degree days. So there's other resources out there like the National Phenology Network. So you can look at they produce these maps where it says that, more than 3 months ago, if you're in the brown area, you had emerald ash borer already emerging out of their trees and infecting other trees. But when you're in a blue spot, like up in the mountains, maybe you're like, well, it's actually, we're closer to the end of August when we're seeing Japanese beetle flying around, moving into other ash trees. So a great resource. And if you look at Colorado, we have all those colors right in there. So quite a mix of ecosystems in there. So it's never the same. You don't just live in the southeast Colorado and say, oh yeah, I'm moving to Grand Junction. It's going to be the same. It's not. Now, the only thing that really just irritates me a little bit is that they use a base 54, which I don't understand because it doesn't really translate to, it's like 12.22 Celsius. So why they couldn't just stick with a base 54 and everybody having the same thing? It's like chargers, why can't we just have one number? So 391 growing degree days actually translates to about that 450 growing degree days when you use a base 50. So we've seen that it varies tremendously from year to year, and that, yes, we are having earlier springs, but you do need to realize that there are some ups and downs. And through these timings, these observations, when things are starting to migrate through or bloom, that helps you to look at better timing for stuff. And so phenology is just a great way to also just be closer to nature and to integrate yourself back into the nature. It's actually something we've used for generations and generations. I feel like it's a lost art. So phenology is one of my favorite topics, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I love the CSU fact sheets. Again, they're pretty broad, but they give you a lot of information. Here's some resources for looking up growing degree days. I really like the CSU website because it's pretty user-friendly. It's got a lot of information. I was able to go back to 1960 easily and get data to produce some of those charts. And a great way to kind of educate yourself about growing degree days and how things change. And it's fun to look back for your particular area and say, oh yeah, we've had all these different swings, and are we trending earlier or not? Are apples maturing at a certain time weeks earlier than they used to, kind of thing. So helps you if you're a grower, if you're a pest management person, and all around just in tune with nature. So with that, that's pretty much the extent of it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Email is kind of best for me. And I'll be here for a little bit to answer questions. I'm not sure if I can stay for the whole thing. I have a pretty busy day. Of course, they announced Emerald Ash Borer in Denver just 2 weeks ago, and it's still a bit chaos and panic by everybody in Denver.
We can accommodate a few questions if anyone has anything specific. I really appreciate your presentation, Ryan. I had heard of growing degree days, but hadn't really put any thought into it recently. And I did put in the chat the two main ones you showed, the green cast online and the Colo State one. So those are in the chat. But
I just like the green cast one because it's user friendly on a phone.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
I really prefer the CSU one.
Okay.
For its complete data, and you can really kind of come up with your specific information for your specific location.
And I know when we found EAB in Carbondale, I had been told about the locust blooming, and as we're driving to Carbondale from Aspen to see if there was EAB there or not, we're passing in bloom locusts as we drive to Carbondale. So definitely have seen what your data is showing. I've seen it for sure. So that was really interesting.
Nice.
So Mark Lovell has a question. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate your presentation. I might have missed it. You had the data and some of those links for the growing degree days, but where was some of those coinciding events? In other words, is that included like in the CSU website? In other words, what some of those, yeah.
So this is my screen still up?
Yeah, yes.
Yes. So this is from Ohio State. It's the best one out there for coinciding events. There's data is lacking. Actually, the data is out there, but it's all over the place. And
Okay.
that's what I'm trying to put together is data from, CSU and from Ohio State, and because all these insects are going to emerge about the same time, no matter, or same time as far as growing degree days, in Ohio as they are the same growing degree days here. The dates are going to be different, but the data is still good. So I'm just trying to produce something, and eventually in the next year, hopefully Colorado will have a Colorado specific for a lot of our plants and insects. It's just a big project that I haven't finished.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of us are interested in things like Western spruce budworm, that sort of a thing. So some of these forest insects.
Yeah, and I have some data. So if you look up bud spruce worm growing degree days, there's data out there, but you're pulling from various articles and scientific articles type stuff. So I'm trying to just bring it all into one location. So, but this is the best, and it's pretty. I only gave like a little intro to his information. He's got quite a bit on there. So check this one out.
Thanks.
And Molly Freilisher put a link to his publication in the chat box.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, thank you again, Ryan. Would you think you'll be able to share your presentation with us so we can share it with people? Or
It's because you asked me to do this 3 weeks ago. This is like a little part of my previous presentation, so I need to kind of clean it up a little bit, but I can try to get that too.
thanks. Yeah. Again, thank you for your quick response and willingness on a short timeline. I had been asking people to present for months and was getting down to the wire on that. So thank you again. Really appreciate it. Stay as long as you can. And we're gonna move over to Dr. Jane Stewart's presentation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Stewart is an associate professor of plant pathology in the Department of Agriculture Biology at Colorado State University. Her research focuses on shade, forest, and fruit trees, addressing critical issues in tree health through the lens of plant pathology. Dr. Stewart brings extensive experience in fungal biology, population genetics and genomics, molecular diagnostics, and the management of plant pathogens, particularly invasive and emerging pathogens affecting trees. found that online, so.
Yeah, thank you so much. My screen, I can't share, so let me see. I may have to open it up again. Let's see if this works. Sorry, so many issues with, I have to quit it, so I'm gonna have to come back.
Okay, that's fine.
Let me see if I can, yeah, unfortunately. So I'll be right
Okay.
back.
Okay. Let's see. Anyone, so I thought, yeah, that was really interesting, that degree day. There was a lot of stuff that I thought matched up with what we were seeing here, and those websites are really helpful to be able to put the numbers together for our area. So pretty interesting. Anyone want to share anything while Dr. Stewart comes back?
Yeah, I'll throw out there that I actually bugged Brad with the U.S. Forest Service, state and private, with because they're pathologist, about degree days in regards to like mountain pine beetle or Doug fir beetle. And he said they've researched it a little bit, but it doesn't consistently work, and so they're not recommending that at this point as a tool. But I feel like foresters in general don't track this type of stuff as well. Traditional foresters don't track it as well as like horticulturalists and urban foresters do. So I think it's an area of cross-disciplinary work that could have some interesting benefits down the road.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. All right, Dr. Stewart, we see your screen. We also see the Zoom warning on there. Yep, perfect. Let's see. Yeah.
Okay, now you can hear me, I think.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so thank you so much for inviting me to come, Cami, and it's great to see some familiar faces. Some of you have probably heard a little bit about pine wilt disease. We've been working on it in my lab probably for the last like 6 years or so, but I wanted to bring it up again because I've been working with city foresters here in Fort Collins, and they've been discussing that it may be on the rise or continuing to be present in the urban landscape. And then we also have a lot of work going on in pondo decline across the West. And so I can kind of highlight as well at the end what we've been finding in pine wilt in our natural forests as well. So pine wilt disease, is this a pest on the rise? As you'll see from the squiggly pictures here, can you see my pointer? Let me change this to laser. You'll see nematodes basically. And if I'm a fungal plant pathologist, so when I see things moving in the scope, it kind of freaks me out a bit. So I have a student though who loves to work on these nematodes. So pine wilt nematode is a pathogen that's present here in North America. It's Prosophorhynchus xiphilis. They're very small in size. And there's a lot of different types of nematodes that you can find on the landscape. Pine wilt is morphologically identifiable, but it does have a sister species, Mucuratus, which is not pathogenic at all. And so when we're looking for pine wilt nematode, really it's best to do things on molecular scale because the identification can be kind of hard to do. What we know about pine wilt is that exotic pines are the primary hosts. So if you've got an urban planting of Scotch pine or Austrian pine, they can go down very quickly. And it was thought for a very long time that our native hosts were tolerant, not very susceptible to the nematode. However, some of our work here in Colorado is sort of pushing some of those ideas to their limits to understand that. It has been found in logs of over 30 species. So we know that pines are the primary host for this nematode, but it has been found in aves, larix, picea, and pseudotsuga. These haven't been live trees. They've been primarily in logs, which is sort of an interesting finding. The nematode reproduces best in pines. And so we know that it can complete its life cycle in about 45 days at 77 degrees and 3 days at 86. So this is going to be a pathogen that thrives in hotter weather. And also it's a pathogen that can carry fungi. So much like the mountain pine beetle, they can carry blue stain or black stain fungi into the trees. And they use this fungi to feed on. They go from a phytophagous to a philophagous stage where they're feeding on those on the fungi, but then that can help enhance mortality, which I'll show you some data to show that. So basically pine wilt is called pine wilt because it causes this lethal wilting of pines. And typically it'll happen when we get conditions above like 68 degrees. The hotter the temperature, the faster those trees are going to fall. So these are some of the exotic pines that you can see, some Scotch and Austrian. And typically these will die fairly quickly. They'll turn yellow. And a lot of times the wood is super light, so you can sort of throw it up in the air because there's not a lot of moisture in that wood. But what you'll see is basically the needles will turn a gray-green, then turn the straw color. So this is a tree that is starting to get killed off. Here you can still see a little bit of green still remaining, but eventually all these needles will turn straw colored. These changes can happen in about a month or faster. A lot of times in inoculated trees, you might get symptoms in about 2 months. And if the temperature is warmer, then you'll get those symptoms a lot faster. Sometimes what you might get, and you get this a lot with the native pines, is you'll get an isolated branch that starts to decline first. And that's usually a trigger like, hey, we might have pine wilt in this tree. And then very quickly the whole tree will turn the straw color. So Austrian and Scotch pines, as a lot of you know, especially in the urban environment, they're really common species planted here for urban forestry because they do well against our climate and also with abiotic conditions and pollution that we see in the urban areas. And they're also used as windbreaks. What we'll see in these Austrian and Scotch pine is typically the upper area of the tree will turn the straw color, and then you'll get a spiral pattern as we get wilting that is occurring in those trees. And the pine wilt, and I'll kind of show the anatomy of the tree, but the pine wilt is basically in the xylem and it's disrupting the water movement. And that's why we start to get that wilting occurring. The trees just can't pull up water anymore through the xylem. So historically, there's been a lot of work looking at what vectors pinewood nematodes. So this is an insect that is vectored by the pine sawyer, which Ryan talked about a little bit. And the two that we have here in Colorado are Monocamus clamater and Monocamus scutulatus. And what we've discovered through some research is that both of these species can vector the pinewood nematode. However, it's been thought that there may be other vectors included, which is some of the research that we're continuing that's ongoing. And I just wanted to talk about the emergence of these two. So clamater typically emerges, the peak is around August 30th to September 1st or September 11th. And then scutulatus is usually the peak flight is about August 25th to September 12th. And again, that can vary, as Ryan highlighted, with the phenology and the growing degree days of the insect. So the disease cycle is a little bit complicated. So basically, and I'm a plant pathologist, so I can't go without showing you a disease cycle. But basically what happens is the pine sawyer will fly around the end of August. And when they first emerge from the trees, they have to feed on healthy tissues for maturation feeding, so they can get ready for mating. So basically what will happen is you'll have an infected beetle that flies to a healthy tree, and they typically feed on the upper shoots, and the damage, I'll show a picture on the next slide, but isn't very diagnostic. So what they'll do is they'll feed in those trees, and then they will move on. But as they fed, and you can see it here, the nematodes then leave the insect's body and they start to enter the wood. And so typically the reason why we see dieback in the upper branches first is because that's where we had that maturation feeding by the infected adults. Then what will happen is the nematodes will get into the vascular tissue, and in a resistant host, they'll die off. So the tree is able to fight off the infection. But in a susceptible host, especially in exotic pines, the nematodes will then colonize the resin canals, block the xylem tracheids, and that's when the disease really starts to progress. And at this stage, the nematode is plant feeding. So it's going to be feeding primarily on the plant tissues. But as the nematode is injected into those trees or enters those trees, it's also carrying fungus. And that fungus then starts to colonize the tree. And so after the tree is starting to die off, the nematode will go into a mycophagous phase where it's actually feeding on that fungi. And then what we see is that we can get basically the adult beetles, when they're ovipositioning, they oviposition on these dying trees. Okay, so then what will happen is you've got an infected tree, a beetle comes in to oviposit its larvae, and then the nematodes, when the larvae are starting to pupate, that's when they enter the insects. And so what we have is sort of this two-phased cycle of pinewood nematode that can occur. And then the bark beetles, of course, can come in and move that blue stain fungi around as well. So here's just some pictures of pine. So this is the pine sawyer here. This is those feeding wounds that we see, the maturation feeding wounds. And then here's larvae that is now pupating, right? It's a pupal chamber with the pupa. And this is when the nematodes enter basically the respiratory system. So this is the trachea of an insect with a ton of nematodes packed inside. And so that's how they get vectored through these monocamus beetles.
Dr. Stewart,
Yeah.
just to go back to the life cycle part. So
Yeah.
It's super like an alien movie, it sounds like. With the
Yeah.
back and forth. So
Yeah.
these nematodes are so tiny. Are they coming out through like the mouths of the adult beetles as they're feeding on the shoots? Like how is it? How are
Well, they're in the
adult beetles?
trachea system, so they could come out through tubes along the breathing holes, basically on the insect. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Thank you, and please ask questions if you have them. Anybody? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So this is where they feed. So the pinewood nematode will feed inside the resin ducts and the xylem. And that's why you get dysfunction starting to happen. So they feed in here. And one thing we know is that they form within the tree. They don't just get distributed all throughout like you might see with Dutch elm disease, but they rather stay in populations, and they're breeding populations. So they're breeding in that tree, and they actually go through different stages in their development in the tree. And here's just a picture showing the embolism that we see. So here's a seedling. This is a Japanese black pine that you can see. And they actually used MRI photographs to show the embolisms that are developing from July 15th to July 30th in the tree. And so the embolisms, which are basically holes within the xylem tissue that this insect is creating, or this nematode is creating, you lose water conductivity pretty quickly in the tree. Okay, so movement of the nematode. So a lot of people ask me, is the nematode in the soil? And the nematode isn't in the soil. It basically can only move through the pine sawyer beetles or through other insects. We have found some species where nematodes are actually in other insects, but the pine sawyer is the best vector by far. So they're moving basically from the pine sawyers, which can travel several miles away from each other. And the pine sawyers, as a lot of you know, are found primarily in sites that are sort of stressed already. So Seth Davis is doing some work looking at burn areas, right? So we find a lot of pine sawyers in those burn areas. And so traditionally, pine sawyers aren't thought to be like a primary pathogen, but when they go to maturation feed, that's when we're getting the movement of these nematodes. And so a lot of times we're going to see movement between July and September. Okay, and that's when these eggs are getting laid in the diseased wood. So what's the history of pine wilt nematode? It was first reported in timber in about 1934, and it was associated with fungi. And then in early 1980s, it was found in non-native pines. And that's when it really started to become a really big issue. So there was a lot of research that was pumped out by the U.S. Forest Service to figure out what is pinewood nematode doing, and what are what's the host range of this? And so what they had discovered in the Midwest is it was found primarily on exotic pines, but it was also found in dying stress native pines in Michigan, Minnesota, and Vermont. And actually my master's advisor, Dale Bergdahl from the University of Vermont, worked a lot on this pathogen. And so there was Mike Wingfield, who is probably the world's most well-known forest pathologist, who's a professor in South Africa, had done some work in Minnesota, did his PhD there, and he had said pinewood nematode is native, it's not exotic. And so the money really dried up for pinewood nematode because it started to become more of a problem outside of the United States as we moved it across other countries than it did inside. And so we have shown that some genetic analysis has shown that it is native to the US, but it's likely native to the eastern area. And so some of the work that we've been doing shows that we find it now in Colorado, but it's not very present outside in other Western areas. And so it's thought to be native from the eastern US. We know that there are other vectors like Monocamus carolinus or titular, which are found in the eastern states. And there are other hosts, include longleaf and loblolly pines in the east. So the mortality first started to show up here, and then there was a progression across Kansas until it finally showed up in Colorado. So there was a lot of work, as I mentioned, done in like the early 80s and 90s, looking at what is the pathogenicity of pinewood nematode. And so what they found was that there were the susceptible species are, of course, what we know, mugo pine, Austrian pine, Scots pine. But then there were also some interesting species like ponderosa, which was actually susceptible. Even in the 1990s, we knew that that was a susceptible host. Whereas there are some, like lodgepole, which is a resistant host. So it seems like we have some variation that occurs within our native pines here. And then, unfortunately, there's a whole nother host of at-risk species. And, you know, we haven't really looked at southwestern white, bishop pine, western white pine, other species, but these could be hosts to pinewood nematode for sure. As I mentioned, it's present in the United States. We know that it's native to certain regions of the United States, but when it moves abroad, especially in Asia, it was been found in China and Japan and Korea, it can cause really massive mortality. And actually, it was just discovered in Portugal and now Spain recently within the last probably 8 years, and it's causing pretty mass die-offs in those exotic pines. So it's a huge issue, not just here in our urban forests or in our western forests, but also globally as well. So just a little background in Colorado. So Bill Jacoby first discovered it in Scotch Pine and Larimer and Weld counties in 2006. And then this is a graph that Tamala Blunt had put together where it was first discovered in Larimer, but then it has been found pretty much all throughout the state by about 2012. And then we started to see reports in Ponderosa when I got here in 2015, and we were actually able to find it and do a first report of Ponderosa, of pinewood nematode in Ponderosa. And since then, what we've been finding is that more and more trees are being detected. And I think our detection methods are better. We're looking for it better, but we don't know if it's increasing in prevalence. It's definitely in our native forest on Pondo, or whether or not it's been here the whole time. One thing that's really interesting is that in 2018, it was the first report in Wyoming in Mugo. And so it does look like it's starting to spread to different areas. Okay, so some of the work that I've been doing is pinewood nematode in Ponderosa. And when I first sort of brought up this project, everybody told me, no, Ponderosa is resistant. It can't be in Ponderosa. But Ned Tisserat, who many of you know, is an urban tree plant pathologist, recently retired from CSU, or about 10 years ago. He found pinewood nematode actually in his own yard up at Carter Lake. And it was kind of funny to us because he had studied pinewood nematode when he was a professor in Kansas. And so a lot of us joked that maybe he brought it. But as we're starting to look in that area, what we're finding is pinewood nematode is pretty present in Colorado. And so this is the first site that we looked at. This is Ned and Bill and I went out and looked for pinewood nematode and looked at other associated factors that we might see. And what you can see is ovipositioning or exit holes that you can see here. You can start to see this black stain fungus that's also associated. So we stripped the bark of many trees, and lo and behold, we did find pinewood nematode in these trees, and we were able to sort of look at the symptomology. One of the fungi that is carried by pine wood nematode is Ophiostoma minus. And this is a fungus that's associated with southern pine beetle, but not necessarily our mountain pine beetle. And what you can see is this is what we call the butterscotch phase of Ophiostoma minus. Here's some fruiting bodies that you can see under the scope. And then for a lot of trees, a lot of pondos that have pine wilt, what you'll find is if you crack back that bark, blackened area. So it's basically the fungus that the nematode has brought in. And at the time, we weren't really sure whether or not is this a pathogen as well, or is it just feeding the nematode? And so we did some experiments where we basically took Ophiostoma minus and infected ponderosa that were either stressed or not stressed. And what we find is that even non-stressed plants, we had 43% of our trees in our non-stress treatment die, whereas 71 in our stress treatment died. And so we know that Ophiostoma minus is also a pathogen of ponderosa pine, but now we know that it can be vectored by some bark beetles, likely the pine sawyers as they're carrying it from tree to tree, and for sure the nematodes. Okay, so how common is pine wilt nematode in our woolly and urban sites in ponderosa pine? And this was a thesis that Dave Atkins, who recently graduated from the University of Wyoming, did while he was here for his master's degree several years ago. And so what we did was we set up sites, woolly sites with 32 and then 12 urban sites along the Front Range. We didn't do anything necessarily in Grand Junction area, Mesa County, but we did do it here in our area. And basically what we did was trapped for monocamus using these black crossbeam traps, and then sampled trees and collected the beetles to look at these. And what we found was that there were a lot of beetles that were collected. So we collected 5,000 beetles from the WUI site and about 53 from our urban sites. And we were able to identify these as either chlamyder or scutulatus. And you can see that you can see that chlamyder was more prevalent than the scutulatus was, but we were still able to collect these. And then we were also able to screen about 280 pondo from WUI sites and 60 from urban trees. So then we tested all of these for pine wood nematode. And so what we found was that in our chlamyder versus scutulatus, so chlamyder is a better vector for pine wood nematode the scutulatus is a better vector for pine wood nematode, though there's fewer on the site. So about 5% of the beetles had pine wood nematode, whereas for chlamyder it was about 3%. And then we did find that our 3% or so of our ponderosa were infected with pine wood nematode. But we weren't able to find any pine wood nematode in our urban trees, which I thought was really interesting. And then in 2019, we saw that scutulatus actually had about 10% pine wood nematode. And we found one scutulatus in an urban site that had pine wood nematode. So from this, what we really were able to identify was that most of the population of our pine sawyers that's infected is going to be in the WUI site compared to that urban site. And at the time, it was sort of thought that we might have reservoirs of monocamus in our urban sites, but it really doesn't look like that. What it looks like is that our WUI sites have a much higher abundances of these vectors, and these WUI sites are what are serving basically the reservoirs for the urban sites. And so what we sort of discovered is that pine wilt disease the risk of it is pretty high throughout the Front Range, probably in rest of Colorado. We've done a lot of surveys now in other states across the West, in California, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and pine wood nematode doesn't seem to be very present. So this could be an insect that is native to the east, but is starting to move to the west, and we might see populations continue to increase in these different areas. So just I'm almost out of time, but just a few pointers of how you collect for this. So what we know is that our exotic pines, there's no resistance. So if a tree gets infected, whether it's stressed or not, the risk of mortality is very high, and the nematode populations increase pretty rapidly. So luckily, these are primarily in our urban sites where we know there's not a lot of vectors, right? But if you do have a site, you want to take that tree out and make sure that you don't get a breeding population of monocamus. In our native pines, what we know is that it's usually associated with stress. And so there have been years where we start to see ponderosa decline, and we know that those trees are infected with pine wilt. But if they get water and stress mechanisms are able to decrease, or resistance can start to build up. So you can start to get tolerance. So if the tree is able to resist, the nematodes will die in that tree and won't be able to persist. But if the trees are stressed, then mortality can start to occur. So how we sample for pine wilt nematode in our exotic pines, usually you can use a lower limb or a symptomatic branch, or you can use a wood disc from the lower trunk. And a lot of times people will send us those samples. In the native pines, typically you need a symptomatic branch or it's an upper in the tree. So the nematodes don't move down the tree as quickly in the native pines as they do in the exotic pines. What we typically do is either cut cookies and then cut those cookies into smaller pieces, or we've developed a method where you can actually just use a drill bit. And so you drill into the tree, gather all of those shavings, and those shavings then can be tested using a molecular assay. We'll either take those wood or the wood pieces and use a Barrowman funnel, which is basically you add wood to this area here, which is inside a funnel, fill it with water, and then we have a tube along on the other side of that funnel, and the nematodes will all collect here. And so we can actually get populations of nematodes, which then we will test using a molecular assay. So there's an assay that we developed in the lab. It's a colorimetric assay where if they're positive, then we get this yellow-orange color. And if the sample is negative for pine wilt, then you get this pink color. And so this is one way that we've been able to assay trees very quickly using these it's called the LAMP assay. We can do this in about an hour. And actually we've developed it so that you can do it in the field. If you have a car, you can attach it, a heat block to the car, and you can perform this. Okay, so management for native pines. One thing is to look out for possible abiotic factors, manage tree stress. The trees can resist, but if there's already stress happening to that tree, it's going to die, likely from pine wilt. For exotic pines, typically you want to remove any trees that are dying before May 1st so that you don't get a breeding population happening. You can landfill it, chip it, burn it, or compost, but you don't want to turn those trees into firewood because you know those beetles are going to emerge. And if they do, then they're likely going to spread the nematode around, right? And remember, those emerging beetles, those are the ones that are spreading pine wilt to healthy trees. Manage the drought stress to avoid the beetles. And then you can do preventative injections for high value trees. So this is a pretty expensive method and it takes a really long time. So you want to prioritize high value trees, but not try to treat everything. So the chemicals that you can use are ivermectin for pine wilt or imamectin-benzoate for the beetles. This is typically how you inject. You usually want to inject late fall, early April before you'll get pine sawyer emergence. And we haven't tried any foliar application. So really this is just an injection method that you can utilize. Okay, and this is just a picture showing pine wilt disease in all landscapes. So in a lot of areas in the West or more in like Kansas and Missouri, you won't see this. But here, because we know that ponderosa is susceptible, we've got here a site in Loveland. Here we've got a WUI site near Carter Lake. And here we've got one right outside of Rocky Mountain National Park. And so we know now that pine wilt isn't just an urban issue like it's been traditionally thought of. It is a forest landscape issue that I think is increasing in prevalence. All right, with that, thank you. And here's my email. If you guys have any samples that you want to send, we are collecting samples and processing them. And if you have any questions, I'll take some questions. Thank you so much.
That was great, Dr. Stewart. Thank you so much. Questions from the group about pine wilt? I know that we have very few ponderosas that grow, at least in the western slope and like in Grand Junction and like the true western slope. There's a smattering of ponderosa, but our primary is the Austrian and Scotch. And I know you had the Mesa County is highlighted as being confirmed for finding Pine Wilt over here.
Yeah, so it was already present. It's present there.
Molly, have you been, or Susan, were you in part of that when it was found?
Yeah, I actually had a sample that Alpine Tree had brought me years ago that had it. So yeah, I've seen it.
So they're starting to see an uptick here in Fort Collins. And so some research ongoing is basically trapping for insects in the urban areas, and then looking for other vectors. Since we know that monocamus isn't prevalent, there might be other species that are able to vector the nematode.
So the adults will feed, like you had that picture of them feeding on the smaller twigs of live trees, but then they lay their eggs in dead trees or dying trees. Is that right?
Yeah, dying, because they like to oviposit in trees that are already weakened. And so you could have beetles that aren't infested, the adults aren't infested, but as they lay their eggs, the larvae the adult beetles that exit, right, they are infested because the nematodes have moved down and moved into them when they're a pupal stage. Yeah, so there's kind of two cycles where you can get movement of the pathogen. So.
And then that's also where mountain pine beetle can pick up the blue stain.
Yeah.
It
is a different species. So, we think of blue stain, that's Leptographium aviantinum. This is Ophiostoma minus. So there are multiple species of blue stain, black stain. But I think it's important to recognize that all of them can cause stress to the tree, right? So we showed Ophiostoma minus is pathogenic, and so is Leptographium aviantinum. We've shown that as well on different hosts. So there are multiple culprits of stress-inducing pathogens that are associated with these insects and with the nematode.
Great. Well, thank you so much. When you said yes to presenting, and I was really excited because I know during the school year you're going to be busy with teaching. So really glad that we could snag you for this summer session.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if anybody's got questions about tree disease, let me know and just send me an email.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
So the next part of the agenda is my update. I was telling Jane, I was like, take as much time as you want. Beth, I don't know if you have any ISA updates that you would want to share. I know that they sent out a training that's coming up. Where'd that go? They're doing a pruning prescription qualification class in the Front Range in Greeley in August. So it's a 3-day course, which includes 2 days of training and demonstrations culminating in an exam. The successful candidate will receive the prescription pruning qualification, being recognized nationwide. You must be an ISA certified arborist to attend the qualification course. However, it's not required to attend day 1. So if you did not get that email or deleted it and you're interested, I have it still in my inbox and I can send it to you if you're interested. There obviously is a cost to it, but I don't really know much about that qualification. So that's great that they're offering some additional qualifications and trainings in the state.
It's also on the website under meetings for chapter events.
Ah, yes, good point.
The climbing comp is this weekend.
Yes, that's what Ryan is helping with.
Yeah. So
A volunteer, yes.
I will see you there then.
Fabulous.
Yes. So great central location this year, easy to get to. And then the annual conference is up in Breckenridge, October 2nd and 3rd.
That's
So
right.
we're finalizing the list of speakers now, and we'll have that posted shortly. Kelly's got to get through the climbing comp first, and then we'll jump to this fall.
Yes, that I understand that.
We are, so anybody that knows Tara Costanzo took a job with ISA. So she's able to work remotely. So she's still local. We'll see her around at different things. But because of that, she had to step down from all of her roles on our local chapter. So we are looking for somebody to help with communications, help on the board. Natalie also got promoted with Davy, and so she's moving to the East Coast.
Good for her.
So congratulations to both of them. We do have someone that was interested in being treasurer, so we do have somebody to backfill Natalie's spot. But yeah, we would love anybody that's interested in getting involved in the board, committees, just, ask one of us, find me at the tree climbing comp and say, what can I do that's, that's just quarterly? What can I do for an hour? Because we'd be happy to split things up so that people get some experience, get to know some new folks, and it can help us all out.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Yeah. I know Vince Urbina found a lot of benefits and of being part of the ISA board. He always touted what he got out of that and was able to participate. Go ahead, Ryan.
Just an update about the ISA pesticide applicator workshop. I took that over to organize that from Tony Smith. She's been doing that for the last decade. We do have dates. It's going to be at the same place it's been in the Northwest Denver Highlands for the last couple of years. It's I was just looking them up. I think it's November. I don't want to mislead you guys. We'll post it on the website, but I think it's November 14th.
If you send it to me, if you send it to me, I send a link to or an email to everybody with the YouTube link and any documents. So if you send it to me, I can include it in that email.
I'm still coming up with presenters, so if anybody wants to present, please reach out to me.
It's the hardest part of any conference.
Yes.
I know there's an epic insect thing going on in the Front Range. Well, this is on the Front Range, but it's the week of in August. I think it's the 12th or something in August. So it's Front Range. So
yeah, but it's the 12th, and I think Ada Japaniets, Seth Davis. I can't remember. I'll be there. There's quite a few speakers from CSU.
Yeah, that's great. And then speaking of conferences, as if you remember, we as an I offer this virtually 3 meetings a year, and then one in person. And so I'm trying to choose which date for the in-person in October. So I'm looking at either October 2nd or October 9th, which are Thursdays. So if you have an opinion, if you would put it in the comments, if you have a preference of the 2nd or the 9th, I'm planning on holding it in Grand Junction to make my life easier. And maybe just going back between Junction and Montrose. It is a lot of work to put this together. So I'm trying to make the location part the easiest part of the whole conference. Finding presenters is a joy, as Ryan pointed out. October 2nd is the conference in Breckenridge, so probably the 9th then. Thank you, Beth. And Adam liked the 9th too, so. Okay, put on your calendars for October 9th. That was easy. October 9th.
Glad to help.
Yeah, thanks. I was like narrowing it down. Let's see. Co-tree view is still going well. Still an option for anyone who wants to track and manage trees. It doesn't have to be a whole community. It could be a park. Cemetery, we're working with Fairmount Cemetery. They have a lot of trees inventoried in their park, but haven't had the staffing to update it. But they are looking at inventorying a smaller cemetery called Riverside in Denver. So it's really for any collection of trees. There's a new tab that Adam and I brainstormed for newly planted trees to help volunteers track newly planted tree health and what their needs are, and also just people who aren't, who are responsible for taking the care of the trees, but might not be their education background. So it's pretty simple to use. Oh, saluting branches. That's not okay. I was like, don't say that it's October 9th. Saluting branches, September 17th. And we do have a saluting branches here event here in Grand Junction at the Veterans Cemetery. Molly Freilisher and I help out with that every year. Teach these arborists how to plant a tree, which they need sometimes. So yeah, that's also a great opportunity to get some training and involvement, especially here on the West Slope. And we're looking, the Grand Junction Tree Board is looking, Forestry Board is looking at doing a hands-on pruning event. I think next, did we figure out a date, Molly? Is it like in the fall?
I have the 19th on my calendar of September, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we're going to do something in Sherwood Park here in Junction, tree pruning day to help get some trees pruned with some CEUs available. So we'll share that information as it gets figured out. And then I saw Ryan said that ISA pesticide applicator workshop is November 11th and 12th. And you said that was where in the Denver area? Oh, you're muted.
I think you said Denver Highlands area.
Denver Highlands. Okay. It's all Denver to me.
I guess I need to unmute for that. Sorry. The PPA Event Center, which is like 20th and Decatur. So it's just west of I-25 in the Northwest Denver Highlands area.
Okay.
Pretty easy to get to. Good parking.
That is helpful.
It's 5 minutes from my house.
Even better. Yeah, pro-green parking is stressful. So that's my little section. So now on the agenda, we'll move into the just kind of a continuation of this. Really, it's just the round robin. So if there's something you wanted to share with the group about what's going on in your community, like for Grand Junction, if you want to share how it's going with the ash tree treatments. Adam, if you want to share how it's going with some of your IRA grants in your area. So if anyone wants to share anything, we have to fill up at least another 20 minutes for our CEUs.
So I would like to request if anybody's interested in sending me observation dates, I would love to add your data to my list of stuff. Yeah, it just date and location, zip code's just fine. Email me or text me. It would be great. But just trying to pull data from all places.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing because I think it'd be more intentional and of your observations, especially for us who are over here, paying attention and seeing, oh yeah, I have a golden rain tree right out my window. Like, oh yeah, they're blooming, but I'm not like paying attention to actual dates and comparisons. So I think that would be nice to kind of be intentionally observations would be nice. And yeah, we'll share Ryan's email out in my email update. People better start sharing. I'm going to call on you. Adam.
Yes, Adam. So we had a variety of planting projects this spring associated with some of the IRA grants and associated with CTC grants. It was an interesting ordering process because we went with 2 nurseries because of trying to just get some species diversity. And but that was 2 orders and like 3 different delivery times, one of which didn't come with a manifest. So trying to keep straight, and the trees weren't labeled that came from that place either. So trying to keep straight where things went and didn't go was a lovely headache. And we think we have some trees at the wrong spot that we need to inventory. And yeah, it's turned it into a nice little extra headache. And so probably what we're going to do is, once we figure it out, is next year we're going to be placing our order, hopefully with Super Trees by the end of August for a couple of them. Is we're probably just going to order some extra trees to give give back to the place that missed it. So like the county with the CTC grant, which was a great little project for the county. It converted this park that was basically nothing to a park that feels like a park. They put a little walking path and stuff in too. But we're just going to give them trees to replace rather than trying to figure out money back and forth. But we did that all for the sake of species diversity, and I think for the sake of headaches and gray hairs, I will probably order from one source in the future, because it was a utter headache for numerous people. But the plantings are going well. The tree stewards are still getting their feet under them. I'm not sure how the partners sold the tree steward parts. I'm getting the impression some of the kids thought it was just a way for them to make money and buy another iPhone, and not so much as in, we want you to be helping care for the trees in your community or at the Boys and Girls Club and places like that. So we have to encourage and get the right mentality, but it's on an upward trajectory. And then we had, I could go on and on. We had a lovely, one of the projects had to get modified because of where the city had some water utilities, despite them being buried 6 to 8 feet. They didn't even want small to medium-sized trees over them, and despite the fact it's in a 20-foot wide stretch of where their lines are buried. So we've had to modify and plant them on a different stretch. And then the school that was on board was not on board, school district, because of financial things and thinking it would look bad for them that they were planting trees when they were asking the citizens for money. And so they may or may not be getting trees next year. They didn't get any this year now because they objected. So we planted a lot of trees, but it was not a simple put them in the ground situation for us. So plan as best as you can, and Murphy will still thwart you.
Yes, this is true. So just for a quick, the IRA money that the state received and gave out in grants last year, we had all the projects on hold because we just didn't know what the government was going to do with that, if they were going to allow us to continue. And they have allowed us to continue. But we've decided to give kind of these communities a soft deadline of the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. And not knowing what's going to happen next fiscal year, it could continue, but we're giving them a kind of a soft, get as much as you can done by September 30th. So town of Alamosa, city of Salida, Boys and Girls Club in the San Luis Valley, the city of Grand Junction, are all moving forward. And then some of the communities that received direct IRA money that wasn't through the State Forest Service, their monies did get removed and withdrawn. And so since the State Forest Service had all this extra money that was promised to us, but we hadn't given out yet, we're trying to supplement, like the city of Glenwood Springs had a grant through the IRA program that was pulled back. And so we are supplementing their program with our extra money, because we're not obviously going to open up the grant program again because of the timelines. So Monte Vista, there's a bunch in the Front Range that we're supplementing, Glenwood Springs. So we're trying to pour money into these communities as quickly as we can, not knowing what's going to happen next fiscal year. So glad to see some movement of planting trees. I planted trees here at the office and nothing is easy. Nothing. So I understand that, but I didn't know it was the utilities being too deep or not deep enough, or they're concerned about utilities and why they moved them. So thanks for that information, Adam. So yeah, in Grand Junction, what we're gonna do, I'm on the forestry board, is since the money is allowed to be put into private property, we are going to work with local businesses to install irrigation into the right-of-way strip that the homeowner technically, they own the right-of-way strip, but that's where the city is allowed to plant trees. But we can't plant they won't plant trees if there's no water in that right-of-way strip. And so the money that we're gonna use from the IRA program will put irrigation on private property running to the right-of-way strip so we can plant trees in those areas. So that's the goal with the Grand Junctions grant. Susan, do you want to talk?
Yeah, I was gonna say I have.
Oh, you're kind of soft.
Oh. How about
There.
now?
Yeah.
I said, talk to me before you guys start, because I actually have drip funds for trees in my program.
Okay. Yeah.
They just have to be on city water.
Yeah. And yeah, the area that we're focused on in Junction is Maine in the 17th area, kind of in that area that's not very treed. Do you want to talk about some of your city water programs, just so people know what's going on?
Yeah, so I have, oh gosh, 4 or 5 different programs I'm running now. I have an intern starting next week. We're doing irrigation audits for private properties. I've expanded that last year. I just did commercial, industrial, institutional properties. So we're helping people with like actually how much water you should be applying, and when, so give them a schedule. I have a bunch of rebates. So we have a turf conversion rebate. We're finishing up our first grant. As soon as we're done with that, a second grant will kick in, and that will actually increase the amount of money they'll get for turf replacement. We're very mindful though of the trees, and so that's why I have water efficiency rebates for like drip systems, just to make sure if people are pulling out their sprinklers, they're not just rocking. They do have to cover the property with 50% plants within 3 to 5 years, so that there's other plants too that trees are getting water from, and we're not creating a heat sink. I have a gray water program. So far, no takers on that one. That one takes some habit changes, but we are one of 6 communities so far in the state that allows that. What am I forgetting? Seems like I'm forgetting something. Oh, Garden in the Box. Partnered with Resource Central. This is the first year we did Garden in the Box to provide low water perennials and grasses. Kind of a small way to remove, a little bit of turf, expand a bed. But was pretty successful. We had like 77 people participate just for Grand Junction in spring, and we have another round going right now for September 6th pickup. And we provide all the water. I got all the water providers to participate and give a $25 discount. So lots going on in water conservation with the city of Grand Junction right now. So
awesome. Yeah, I took advantage of the Garden in a Box and got some pretty flowers that are doing pretty good overall.
Oh, good. Good. I think you got the one I designed too, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I had to figure out where I had dappled sunlight, but figured it out. I just liked your selection better, but I didn't have as much shade as the plants wanted.
Well, so, they're adaptable.
They're doing all right. Aaron, do you have anything you'd like to share about Super Trees? What's going on with you all?
There we go. Yeah, our availability just released for the year late last week. So I've sent that out to a few folks, but we're doing some allocations in the beginning of the month, next month. So if anyone's interested in seeing that, we got some cool stuff on there this year. Finally got Gila Monster into production, the Gamble Oak. Just have a few of those. They're multi-stem though, not the tree form. But yeah, just getting ready to start shipping in trees here in September and working with some folks. Sorry to hear you had some rough sides. Hopefully that wasn't from us. I thought things went pretty well when we were out there. But yeah, we're staying busy and trying to stay cool.
Yeah. Is there any, besides the Gila monsters, any other small batch interesting ones that you are producing this year?
So we've done fruit trees in the past, not too often though, but this year we have some 4-in-1 apples and a couple 3-in-1 cherries as well. Some interesting fruits that we only have about 10, 15 of each. So I'm really curious to see if folks are interested in those. And then we have our fruitless dribbling mulberry on there as well. Trying to think. There's a couple new things I've never seen before that I'm learning about as we go. The skinny jeans columnar oak, that's another one. Jeans as in GENES.
Oh, clever.
How fun. But yeah, there's some new stuff. So
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Josh, so Josh is with the town of Meeker. I conducted their tree inventory this June. So the data is all in there. I think there was like 450 tree points I collected.
Around 400.
Yeah. It went well. There was some there were some bigger trees, and I realized when I started the inventory, your main central city park had some really big spruces, and I think the biggest tree I inventoried was a cottonwood that was in really good shape, actually.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you doing that. Glad we were able to get that knocked out. I think part of that, yeah, through help through the state here, and it's been needed for a while. So those trees are all on town property, but ERBM managed grounds.
That's an interesting relationship for you
Yeah,
to
it
manage.
is. So we appreciate you doing that, and
Oh yeah.
looking forward to utilizing that kind of moving forward with some sort of a management plan.
Yeah. Whenever I do inventories, I tell them that I'll do the report in the off season. So once the leaves fall off the tree, and I'm not as busy as when I put the report together. But what's nice about the co-tree view is you have access to all the trees as soon as while I'm doing the inventory, while the inventory is being done. So you can start managing your trees before I even get started on the report.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We got a couple removals about to happen because of that report and the tree risk assessment. So also appreciate that.
What was interesting as I was doing the main park, and I was looking at the honey locusts, and they looked terrible, and I was really concerned that it was a pesticide or something going on. So I took some photos and sent them to Molly, and she's like, I think it's the honey locust plant bug. Yes. And so I think Ryan, you mentioned that as well. I think it's like had a boom across the state this year. Because when I went back to looking at the trees and like tapped the branches on my hand, they just emerged. And I was like, oh, wow, you were hiding really well. And they were just covering that plant. So it was really interesting to see how Meeker, Montrose, the Front Range, I heard about the plant bug kind of all over the state. So, and then some of the parks crew was there while I was looking at the trees. So I got to show them the bugs while they were there.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, they didn't mention anything like that. So
when I was doing the inventory, I kept hearing this knocking when I was doing the big cottonwood. And I thought, is there a woodpecker in this tree? Because if there is, I need to, like, that could mean that there's dead wood or something's going on. And I just couldn't figure out where it was in this tree. So it's a huge canopy. So I just laid down on the ground because I was trying to figure out where this knocking noise was coming in the big tree. And so I just laid there and tried to like figure out where the sound was coming from. And finally I realized it was two branches knocking and rubbing against each other in the canopy. I
Oh
finally
man.
just laid down. I was like, my neck is hurting and I have to figure out if there's a bird in this tree or what's going on. So you'll see in the notes that I put that there's knocking, rubbing branches in the ground.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. I'll find which tree that is just by looking through the data.
Yeah. So I was just like, I gotta figure this out, but I can't stand anymore. So I just laid down. So people walking through the park are like, this crazy lady's laying on the grass staring at the canopy. Just getting my nature therapy.
Yeah. Well, it was great. So we do appreciate that, and looking forward to utilizing it.
Yeah, yeah, me too. So Josh had applied for a Colorado Tree Coalition grant, and then the State Forest Service, we took it over. But just a reminder that the Colorado Tree Coalition has their grants, and they actually moved into a rolling grant. So it's not opens during a certain time period anymore. It's open year round. And so you just go onto their website, coloradotrees.org, and I think it's programs, and then you submit some information about your grant request, and then they'll get back to you with questions. But it's a match, a 50-50 match up to $6,000. And you can do planting, education, outreach materials, tree inventories, management plans. It's anything tree related. You can ask for a grant from them for activities. So just so you know, they're doing that rolling grant now instead of a certain time frame. All right. Anyone else want to share something?
I'll share. So
Please.
we have a help desk in Mesa, Delta, Montrose counties. Trees are almost always our number one question. And we've had some fun ones recently that I shared when we had our pest group here. But one very memorable one was from Cedar Edge. Resident had beetles emerging inside their log home. And one was the ponderous borer, which I had never seen before.
Do you have it in the room with you?
No, it's in Mel's office. This is our largest insect in Colorado. It was very surprising. I think I gasped when the master gardeners showed me inside the little yogurt container, because it's huge, over 2 inches. And the house is made of Douglas fir. And so this had emerged onto the daughter's dresser. Thanks, Cami. It's an insect of interest sheet on it. And the guy was just curious. He also had, there were a number of other beetles, maybe in the genus, don't know how to say it, Arhopolis, Arhopalis. New house borer is that common name. And I guess typically you let the logs sit for a couple years before you build your house, but that didn't happen in this case. They'd come from Craig and brought down to Cedar Edge. And so the homeowner is doing what he needs to do to treat the inside and the outside. But that was just a really interesting one. And all those are now in our Western Colorado insect collection, which I'll also put out there. That collection lives here in the Grand Junction office. It's all insects, like mostly insects from Western Colorado. And so that's a resource for you if you're in the area and just want to see it, or you want to use it as a reference for something. That's what we use it here, in addition to kind of taking it on the road with us for education. So there's a lot in there. And we now have staff and an intern working on organizing, expanding, and digitizing the collection. So just a plug for that also.
Yeah, that ponder spore was pretty cool to see in person.
Yeah, it's got all these spine. I mean, it is wild looking. Pretty awesome.
Jane, did you want to share anything?
One thing, just on the Western Slope, we've been doing a lot. So my lab works a lot with the Cytospora canker, which I think some of you know. But we've been looking at basically the pathogenicity of Cytospora plurivora, which is the main peach pathogen in Colorado, and it has a really broad host range. So I think it's just important for folks to know that if they have Cytospora in an urban tree, it could be plurivora, and we now know the spores can be wind disseminated. And so I think cleaning up Cytospora canker in peaches is also going to have to include cleaning up Cytospora in the urban or trees that are near those areas as well. So I thought it's just, yeah, we did like a survey on apples, peaches, and cherries and found, I think it was 10 different Cytospora species on those hosts. But Cytospora plurivora is the most virulent to peaches, and it's found on a pretty broad host range. So I thought that was kind of interesting and might be applicable to you guys as you're going out and looking at people's houses and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if we should look at that cottonwood that's in the parking lot over here, because Jane does a lot of the research at my office here with Dr. David Stearley. I don't know if he's Dr.
He does. Yeah, he has his,
It's like, wait.
PhD now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we just had all of our trees on the campus pruned, but I wonder if we should take a closer look at the cottonwood that's in between the parking lot and the residency.
Okay. Yeah, and I've never surveyed the little forest on campus. That would be interesting to look at what's there.
Right, that would we wouldn't want to be the infestation points.
I know. Yeah.
That'd be embarrassing.
Yeah. But Cytospora, as we're doing more research about it, it's really a complex system. It's really interesting. And I've lived in lots of other places, and Cytospora is not as problematic as it is here. And I think it's the fluctuations in temperature, maybe there's because not a lot of moisture. So maybe other fungi take over and Cytospora can hang out. It's like well adapted to our environments and such. But yeah, it's unfortunate that that species is found in other tree species. So it's going to be harder to manage for the growers for sure.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have honed in on 11 o'clock. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
Well, one other thing that is very unconfirmed and very speculative is that a CPW officer texted me and said, "What do I do if somebody thinks they found EAB in Monte Vista?" And I was like, "Well, have them drop it by our office or extension, and can we get the address?" And I haven't heard anything back yet. I'm guessing it's one of the lookalikes, but at least the education campaign is working, and that people are considering what might be it or might not be it, and letting people know.
That's very true. Yeah, keep me posted on how we can help, and then the address of where to. I think Mel Schreiner in our office here, our entomologist, is able to confirm, but they do need to go to the Denver guy, Chuck, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we had a potential scare in Eagle, and it was observed by a wildfire person who was doing a defensible space inspection. So it is nice that people are keeping an eye out for them. It was also it was probably cedar, apple borer, and a bunch of other stuff, but not emerald ash borer. So yeah, let us know how we can help on that, Adam. All right, I will submit our CEUs to ISA, and this recording will get posted to our YouTube channel. So Ryan and Jane, you can share that information with people. I really appreciated and enjoyed your presentations. Super great information. I hope people will watch the videos since a lot of people missed today. So really great information. So I'll send out an email with the links, and thank you again for attending.
Yep. Thanks for the invite. See you all.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.